There's a simple truth most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Suffering isn't something that happens to you. It's something you create moment by moment without even realizing it. Buddhism doesn't call this a tragedy. It calls it choice. And the moment you see that choice clearly, everything changes. Right now, you're carrying weight you don't need to carry. Worries that haven't happened yet. Regrets about things you can't undo. Expectations that tighten around your chest like invisible chains. You've been told this is just part of being human, that life is hard and you have to push through. But what if the struggle itself is the problem? What if suffering isn't inevitable but optional? In this video, we're going to explore the core Buddhist teaching on suffering. Not the surface level advice you've heard before, but the deeper truth that can actually end it. And by the end, you'll understand why most people suffer needlessly and how you can step out of that cycle starting today. Before we begin, what form of suffering are you noticing in yourself right now? Let's begin with something uncomfortable. You are the author of your own suffering. Not your circumstances, not other people. You. Buddhism teaches that pain is inevitable. Life will bring challenges, loss, change. But suffering is what we add on top of that pain. It's the story we tell about it. The resistance, the clinging, the refusal to accept what is. Imagine you're holding a hot coal. The heat burns your hand, that's pain. But if you keep gripping it, insisting it shouldn't be hot, blaming someone for handing it to you, replaying the moment over and over, that's suffering. And yet this is what we do every single day. We take a moment of discomfort and stretch it into hours, days, years of inner torment. Someone says something hurtful. The words sting, that's pain. But then you replay the conversation 100 times. You imagine what you should have said. You build resentment. You question your worth. That's suffering, and it's optional. The Buddha identified this pattern over 2,000 years ago. He called it dukkha, often translated as suffering, but more accurately understood as dissatisfaction, unease, a constant low-grade discomfort with life as it is. And he said something radical. This suffering has a cause, and that cause can be removed. So what is the cause? Attachment. Not love, not caring, not connection, but attachment. The desperate clinging to things being a certain way. The refusal to accept impermanence. The belief that if you could just control everything, you'd finally be at peace. You suffer when you cling to pleasure, trying to make it last forever. You suffer when you resist pain, insisting it shouldn't exist. You suffer when you ignore the neutral moments, waiting for something better to come along. In every case, suffering arises because you're fighting reality. Think about the last time you were truly miserable. Strip away the surface story and look deeper. Weren't you, at the core, resisting something? A situation you didn't want, a feeling you couldn't accept, a person who wouldn't behave the way you needed them to. The suffering wasn't the situation itself, it was your refusal to let it be what it was. This doesn't mean you become passive, it doesn't mean you stop trying to improve your life, or that you tolerate harm. It means you stop adding unnecessary layers of mental anguish to what's already challenging enough. You face what is without the internal tantrum, and that shift, from resistance to acceptance, is where freedom begins. Here's where it gets interesting. Most people think acceptance means defeat. They confuse it with giving up, with lying down and letting life walk all over them. But Buddhist acceptance is something entirely different. It's not resignation, it's clarity. It's seeing things as they actually are, not as you wish they were. And from that clear seeing, you can respond instead of react. When you accept that it's raining, you don't stand outside getting soaked while cursing the sky. You grab an umbrella, you adapt, you move forward. But when you refuse to accept the rain, when you rage against it, when you let it ruin your mood, when you spend the whole day complaining, you suffer. The rain doesn't care. Your resistance only drowns you further. The same applies to everything. Relationships end. Jobs are lost. Bodies age. Plans fall apart. You can fight these truths with every fibre of your being, or you can acknowledge them and ask, what now? One path leads to endless suffering, the other leads to peace. But here's what makes this so difficult. Your mind doesn't want you to accept things. It wants to fix, control, predict, and protect. It's wired for survival, not serenity. So it constantly scans for problems, real or imagined. It replays the past, trying to rewrite it. It rehearses the future, trying to prevent disaster. And in the process, it pulls you out of the only moment where life actually exists, right now. Buddhism teaches that this mental habit, this constant time traveling between past and future, is the root of almost all psychological suffering. Because in this present moment, unless you're in immediate physical danger, you're probably okay. You're breathing. You're alive. The crisis is almost always happening in your head, not in reality. So the question becomes, can you stay here? Can you be with what is, even when it's uncomfortable, without spinning out into stories and spirals? That ability, that willingness to be present with life as it unfolds, is the key to ending suffering. Not someday, not after you fix everything, but now. And this brings us to something crucial, something most people completely misunderstand about Buddhist teaching. Ending suffering doesn't mean feeling blissful all the time. It doesn't mean nothing ever bothers you. It means you stop creating extra layers of pain on top of what's already present. You stop turning every small discomfort into a personal crisis. There's a difference between feeling sad and suffering over your sadness, between experiencing anger and building a whole identity around your anger, between facing a challenge and drowning in despair about the challenge. One is a natural human response. The other is optional mental torture. Let me show you what this looks like in real life. Imagine you lose your job. That's the event. Painful, yes, but it's a single moment of difficulty. Now watch what the mind does. It doesn't just feel the loss. It starts building. I'm a failure. I'll never find another job. Everyone will judge me. I'm going to lose everything. My life is over. See what happened? You took one painful moment and turned it into an entire catastrophic story. That story, not the job loss itself, is what crushes you. Buddhism isn't asking you to pretend losing your job doesn't hurt. It's showing you that most of your suffering comes from the narrative you build around it, not the event itself. When you strip away the story and return to what's actually true in this moment, you find something surprising. You're still breathing. You still have skills. Possibilities still exist. The future hasn't happened yet, and suddenly there's space to move, to adapt, to respond with clarity instead of panic. That's the power of acceptance. It clears the fog so you can see what's actually in front of you. Now here's where people get stuck. They think accepting reality means they can't want things to be different. They think it means settling, becoming passive, losing their drive. But that's not it at all. You can accept where you are right now and still work towards something better. In fact, you must accept where you are if you want to move forward effectively, because you can't change what you refuse to see clearly. Think of it this way. If you're lost in a forest, the first step isn't running randomly in any direction. It's stopping, looking around and admitting, okay, I'm lost. That's acceptance. Only then can you figure out which way to go. But if you keep insisting you're not lost, if you keep pretending you know where you are, you'll just wander deeper into confusion. Acceptance isn't the end of the journey. It's the beginning of an honest one. So what does this actually require from you? It requires courage, real courage. Not the kind that fights external battles, but the kind that faces internal truth. It takes guts to stop running from discomfort, to stop numbing yourself with distractions, to stop pretending everything is fine when it's not. It takes strength to sit with sadness without immediately trying to fix it, to feel anger without lashing out, to experience fear without letting it paralyze you. Most people avoid this. They'd rather scroll, shop, binge, work themselves to exhaustion, anything to avoid sitting still with their own inner reality. But every time you avoid what you feel, you give it more power. Every time you push it down, it grows heavier, and eventually it doesn't just sit quietly in the background, it erupts. Or worse, it calcifies into chronic anxiety, depression, bitterness. Buddhism offers another path. Feel it, all of it. Not forever, not dramatically, but fully. Let the emotion move through you like weather through an open field. Don't cling to it, don't resist it, just let it be. And here's what you'll discover. Emotions aren't permanent. They rise, they peak, they fade, but only if you let them. When you grip them or push them away, they linger, they haunt you, they turn into suffering. This is why meditation isn't about emptying your mind or achieving some blissed out state. It's about learning to be with whatever arises without adding fuel to the fire. You sit. Thoughts come, feelings come. You don't judge them, you don't fight them, you just notice. And in that noticing, something shifts. You realize you're not your thoughts. You're not your emotions. You're the awareness that experiences them. And that awareness, it's always calm, always still, no matter what's happening on the surface. Once you touch that stillness, even for a moment, everything changes. You stop being tossed around by every passing mood. You stop reacting to every trigger. You develop what Buddhists call equanimity, a deep, unshakable peace that doesn't depend on external conditions. Not because your life becomes perfect, but because you stop demanding that it does. And this is the part most people miss. Peace isn't something you achieve by controlling your circumstances. It's something you access by changing your relationship to them. You can have a chaotic life and a calm mind. You can face difficulties and still feel grounded, because your peace isn't dependent on life going your way. It's rooted in your ability to stay present, to accept what is, and to respond with wisdom instead of reactivity. But let's be honest, this isn't easy. Your mind will resist. It's been running the same patterns for years, maybe decades. It's used to worrying, controlling, resisting. Those habits feel safe even though they cause suffering. So when you first start practicing acceptance, it'll feel strange. Your mind will scream that you're doing it wrong, that you need to fix things, that sitting with discomfort is dangerous. That voice, it's not wisdom, it's fear, and you don't have to obey it. You can acknowledge it. I hear you, fear, and then gently return to the present moment. Again and again. That's the practice. Not perfection, but return. Not eliminating the mental noise, but not letting it run your life either. Here's something powerful to understand. Every time you choose presence over panic, you're rewiring your brain. Neuroscience backs this up. Your neural pathways, the mental shortcuts your brain uses, get stronger with repetition. If you practice anxiety, you get better at being anxious. If you practice presence, you get better at being present. It's that simple and that challenging. So the question isn't whether you'll face difficulty. You will. Life guarantees that. The question is, will you meet it with resistance or acceptance? Will you add suffering to pain? Or will you allow pain to move through you without turning it into a prison? One choice keeps you stuck, the other sets you free. And the beautiful part? You get to choose. Every single moment you get to choose. Acceptance doesn't mean you become passive. That's the misconception that stops people from practicing it. They think accepting life as it is means giving up, settling, letting everything fall apart. But that's not what Buddhist acceptance means at all. True acceptance is active. It's clear-eyed. It's the foundation for wise action, not the absence of it. Think about it this way. If you're lost in the woods, panicking won't help you find your way out. Denial won't either. What helps is accepting where you are. Okay, I'm lost. And then calmly looking for a path forward. Acceptance isn't the end of effort. It's the beginning of effective effort. When you stop wasting energy resisting reality, you have more energy to actually work with it. When you stop arguing with what is, you can finally see what to do next. This is the wisdom Buddhism offers. You don't have to like what's happening to accept it. You don't have to approve of it, agree with it, or want it. You just have to stop pretending it isn't real. Because resistance doesn't change reality. It only drains you. And here's where it gets interesting. The moment you accept something fully, it often begins to shift. Not always in the way you expected, but it shifts. Why? Because you're no longer feeding it with resistance. You're no longer locked in a battle with it. You've created space. And in that space, new possibilities emerge. Solutions you couldn't see before suddenly become obvious. Paths forward that were hidden by your panic start to reveal themselves. Maybe the relationship doesn't heal, but you find clarity about what you need. Maybe the job doesn't return, but you discover a direction you never considered. Maybe the pain doesn't vanish, but you stop letting it define you. That's the paradox of acceptance. By letting go of the demand that things be different, you often create the conditions for real change, not forced change, organic change, the kind that lasts. Let's talk about suffering for a moment. Buddhism makes a distinction that most people miss. There's pain, and then there's suffering. Pain is inevitable. It's part of being alive. You'll lose people you love. You'll face disappointment. Your body will age. Things will break. That's pain, and it's universal. But suffering? Suffering is what happens when you resist pain. When you tell yourself it shouldn't be happening. When you grip it, replay it, turn it into a story about how unfair life is. Pain says, this hurts. Suffering says, this shouldn't hurt. Why is this happening to me? When will it end? One is clean. The other is layered with resistance, And that's where the real agony lives. You felt this, even if you've never named it. Think about a time when something difficult happened and you accepted it quickly. Maybe you got stuck in traffic and just shrugged. Maybe someone cancelled plans and you adapted without drama. How did that feel? Probably frustrating, sure, but manageable. Now think about a time when you resisted hard, when you fumed, spiraled, replayed the situation over and over, same level of difficulty, maybe even less, but it felt unbearable. That's the difference. The pain was the same, the suffering was your creation, and if you created it, you can also stop creating it. That's your power. Not to control life, but to control your response. Not to avoid pain, but to stop adding suffering on top of it. This might sound cold at first, like you're being told to just suck it up, but it's actually the opposite. It's deeply compassionate, because when you stop resisting, you can finally be kind to yourself. You can say, this is hard, and I'm allowed to feel it. You can grieve without guilt. You can struggle without shame. You're not pretending everything is fine. You're just not making it worse by fighting reality. There's a story in Zen about a monk who loses everything. His home burns down, his family is gone, he's left with nothing. A traveller finds him sitting peacefully by the ashes and asks, "How can you be so calm?" The monk replies, "I'm not adding to the fire." That's it. That's the teaching. Life will bring flames, but you don't have to pour gasoline on them. You don't have to stand there feeding the blaze with your resistance, your bitterness, your endless what-ifs and if-onlys. You can just sit with what is, feel it, let it burn itself out. And when the flames die down, you'll still be there, whole, aware, ready to rebuild. This is what makes acceptance radical. In a world that tells you to fight everything, to never give up, to keep pushing no matter what, acceptance says, pause, breathe, see clearly. It doesn't make you weak, it makes you wise. It doesn't mean you stop caring, it means you care without destroying yourself in the process. So how do you actually practice this? Start small. You don't have to accept the biggest, hardest thing in your life right away. Start with something minor, traffic, a spilled drink, a delayed email. Notice the resistance rising. Notice the urge to complain, to tense up, to spiral into frustration. And then, just for a moment, try something different. Say to yourself, this is what's happening right now. Not with defeat, with clarity. This is what's happening and I can be okay while it does. Feel the difference. You're not collapsing into helplessness. You're standing steady in reality. And the more you practice this with small things, the stronger that muscle becomes. Eventually, you'll be able to bring it to bigger challenges. Not perfectly, never perfectly, but more skillfully, with more grace, with less unnecessary suffering. Because here's the truth nobody tells you. You've already survived everything that's happened to you so far. Every loss, every betrayal, every disappointment. You're still here, and you'll survive what's coming too. Not because you'll control it, but because you'll meet it with presence instead of panic, with acceptance instead of resistance. And that shift, that simple, profound shift, is where freedom lives. Lesson 7. The universe doesn't owe you an explanation. There's a very human tendency we all share. The need to know why. Why did this happen to me? Why now? Why them and not me? Why did it have to end this way? We crave explanations like we crave air. We think if we can just understand the reason, the pain will hurt less, the confusion will clear, the wound will close. But Buddhist wisdom offers something uncomfortable and liberating all at once. Sometimes there is no answer you'll ever receive, and that's okay. The universe doesn't owe you an explanation. It doesn't need to justify its timing, its choices, its mysteries. Your job isn't to figure it all out, it's to keep walking anyway. This is hard to accept because we live in a world built on logic, cause and effect, questions and answers. We're taught that everything has a reason, and if we search long enough, we'll find it. But life isn't a math problem. It's not a puzzle with all the pieces waiting to be placed. Sometimes things happen, and the only honest answer is we don't know why, and we may never know. That uncertainty terrifies us, so we dig, we obsess, we replay events in our minds, searching for clues, for patterns, for meaning. We ask the same questions over and over, hoping this time the answer will appear, but it doesn't. And while we're stuck in that loop, life keeps moving. Opportunities pass, healing waits, growth stalls, all because we refuse to move forward without an explanation. Buddhism teaches that clinging to the need for answers is another form of suffering. It's like standing at a fork in the road, refusing to take either path until someone appears and tells you which one is correct. But no one's coming, and while you wait, you're just standing still. The path forward isn't found in understanding why, it's found in accepting that you may never know and choosing to walk anyway. This doesn't mean you stop reflecting. It doesn't mean you ignore lessons or patterns. It means you stop letting the absence of answers hold you hostage. You grieve what's gone, you feel what's real, and then, even without closure, even without clarity, you take the next step. Think about the people you admire most, the ones who've endured loss, hardship, betrayal. Did they wait until everything made sense? Did they pause their healing until the universe handed them a signed letter of explanation? No. They moved through the fog. They carried the questions with them, but they didn't let those questions become chains. That's strength. Not having all the answers and moving forward anyway. Not because you're ignoring the pain, but because you're refusing to let confusion become your prison. Here's what happens when you let go of needing to know why. You stop wasting energy on things you can't control. You stop torturing yourself with endless what-ifs. You start focusing on what you can do now, today, in this moment. And slowly, subtly, you begin to feel lighter. There's a Zen saying, the obstacle is the path. Sometimes the very thing blocking you, the unanswered question, the unresolved ending, is actually teaching you something deeper than any explanation ever could. It's teaching you resilience, trust, surrender. It's showing you that you're strong enough to live without knowing, and that's a kind of freedom most people never find. So if you're stuck right now, waiting for life to make sense, hear this gently. You might never get the closure you're looking for. The person might never apologize, the situation might never be explained. The timing might remain forever confusing, and that's not a sign that something's wrong with you. It's just the nature of existence. Not everything wraps up neatly, not every story has a clear ending, but you can still move forward. You can still heal. You can still build something beautiful from the ashes of what you didn't understand. Let go of the need to know why, and you'll find something better, the courage to live fully, even in the mystery. Conclusion. Life will never stop being uncertain. It will never hand you a roadmap with every turn labelled and every outcome guaranteed. And the more you fight that truth, the more exhausted you'll become. But the moment you stop demanding answers, stop resisting what is, stop clinging to control, that's when something shifts. Not out there, but in here, inside you. You begin to move differently, lighter, freer. Not because life got easier, but because you stop making it harder. Buddhism doesn't promise you a life without pain. It promises you a life without unnecessary suffering. And that difference, that one shift in perspective, is everything. You've heard 7 lessons in this video, not because they're easy, but because they're true. Because they work. Because thousands of years of wisdom have pointed to the same quiet revelation. Peace isn't found by controlling life, it's found by flowing with it. So as you go forward, remember this. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need perfect clarity or flawless faith. You just need to take one step, then another, with presence, with trust, with the quiet knowing that even when you don't understand, you're still exactly where you need to be. Stop interfering, stop resisting, stop waiting for permission to move forward. Life is already flowing. The question is, will you flow with it or keep standing still, trying to redirect the river with your hands? Let go, breathe deep, and trust that the current knows where it's going. Even if you don't, especially if you don't, that's not giving up, that's waking up. And it might just be the most powerful thing you ever do. You've been taught your whole life that happiness comes from getting what you want, that peace arrives when everything finally lines up the way you planned. But Buddhist wisdom flips that completely. It says peace isn't the reward for controlling your life, it's what's left when you stop trying to. When you drop the resistance, release the grip, and let reality be exactly what it is without your constant commentary. That's when you discover something astonishing. You were never broken. You were never missing anything. You were just exhausted from fighting what was always meant to flow. So here's what changes starting today. You stop waiting for life to explain itself before you move forward. You stop demanding that people, circumstances, or outcomes behave according to your script. You accept what is, fully and without conditions, and from that acceptance you act with clarity instead of panic. You feel pain when it comes, But you don't build monuments to it. You let it pass through like wind through an open window. And in doing so, you reclaim the one thing that was always yours, your peace. Not the fragile kind that depends on everything going right, but the unshakable kind that remains even when everything goes sideways. That's the key. That's the end of suffering. Not someday, right now.